Taking your blanket with you, huh? It's kind of a chilly kind of night. Good evening. So glad that you're here, even if it's to escape the cold, get into a warm building. Miss Carol said she's tired of standing in front of the refrigerator for heat. It's cold. It is cold. I'm so glad that you're here. We are in 1 Samuel chapter 18. Now, we are a couple chapters into the David narrative. David has been chosen from among his brothers by God to be Israel's next king after Saul. Now, he's not quite in the throne yet. Now, we're working our way to that, but for Samuel and for God, it's a foregone conclusion. Now, with David, it's hard to kind of get a grip on where he thinks of himself being, because he is extremely humble. He's extremely respectful of Saul, even in spite of, as we're going to see tonight, some of the things that Saul has done to him. And so that's rather amazing in and of itself as well. David has killed Goliath. We would say David is still a pretty young man. He has taken a job in the palace, if you will, playing a musical instrument for King Saul, playing the lyre to soothe him. And so we see what we need to know, and that is that David's popularity is trending upward. He's not just some unheard of shepherd boy out tending his daddy's sheep on the backside of Bethlehem, way up over in Benjamin. It's not. David is starting to get national notoriety. He's done something pretty spectacular in battle with Goliath, and his fame is steadily growing. And so that's what we're going to see a little bit more of tonight as well. End chapter 17 with Saul's question about who David's father is, mainly so he can continue granting that promise, and we're going to talk about that some, the kingly promise, what would be done for the one who slayed this great and mighty Philistine. His family would be free in Israel, meaning they would be tax exempt. We talked about that some. That's why he needs to know who the father is, so he can grant that. They would receive great riches and a daughter of Saul in marriage, and we'll see a little bit about that tonight as well. So we jump into chapter 18 and begin to read. It starts in verse 1. As soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. And Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt. And David went out and was successful wherever Saul sent him, and so that Saul set him over the men of war. And this was good in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. Now, there's a few key things happening here that the author is helping set the stage for. Right? Interesting is leading off with the friendship with Jonathan. I don't know yet a lot of this, but we see right away that the text is focused on what Jonathan is doing and not David. David is sort of the secondary in these first couple of verses. It's about what Jonathan is doing. And so we see here in verse 3, Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. We don't get words here. We think about a covenant. We think about the Mosaical covenant, or first covenant I think about is the Abrahamic covenant. There's some that are older than that. The Noahic covenant is older, right? The rainbow is a Noahic covenant. Abraham, the Davidic covenant that's going to be coming later. Here we have Jonathan making this covenant with David, but there's no stipulations. Covenant usually entails one party making a promise to the other party, and the other one making a promise to this party. We've got mutual obligations on each side. We'll talk about that at some point, covenants. However, there's no words. What we see here is action. Verse 4, Jonathan stripped himself of a robe. He gave David his armor, sword, bow, belt. And then, of course, the text leaves Jonathan right here. So we've got these few verses. Here's what's happening as the shortened, condensed version here. Jonathan's covenant with David and then the actions that follow, what we would get out of this, being steeped in covenant knowledge, Jonathan is abdicating his right to the throne. Jonathan is acknowledging David as the heir apparent to the throne. This is tantamount to Jonathan saying, I'm no longer son of the king, I am behind David. David is the guy. He's taking my spot in the lineage to the throne. So that's what we get out of what's taking place here. With this exchange of Jonathan giving David of his robe, and it's understood that his robe here is his royal robe. It's not, he didn't just get out of the tub or anything. This is very significant. And then the author just kind of quickly moves right on. We do come to understand, if you've read ahead, you see that Jonathan and David are very good. They're good friends. You see that the word play here is not embellished or anything. Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Jonathan and David are very good friends, and that's going to come to bear as we work our way through the narrative. So we get to, I want to jump to verse 5 here. In fact, the last two lines here. It was good in the sight of all the people, also in sight of Saul's servants. Just a way of letting us know, showing historically that David's reputation is growing. His fame is growing. The things that he is doing, in this case, it is his success. Whatever Saul's sending him out to do, he's doing it and doing it well. Right? This is something that's bolstering David's reputation even further. This is just David's ascension to the throne. To get to the throne, he has to be accepted by the people. Notice Samuel didn't anoint him king, grab him by the hand, and take him to the palace. We don't really have a palace just yet, per se. Things have to happen first. Okay. We'll then actually get back to Samuel the prophet in the next chapter, chapter 19. Verse 6 sort of catches us up in time. From the time David kills the Philistine, Goliath, verse 6, as they were coming home, when David returned from striking down the Philistine, the women came out, all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tambourines, with songs of joy, with musical instruments. It's great. It's a party. It's a parade. We would think about Super Bowl champions. Super Bowl's coming up before long. They usually have a parade in the city of the team that wins the Super Bowl. This is a joyous thing. We've been victorious, and they come out and they're meeting, right? It's all great and good until verse 7. And the women sang to one another as they celebrated. Saul has struck down his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very angry, and this saying displeased him. He said, they've ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed thousands. And what more could he have but the kingdom? Well, he just doesn't know, does he? And Saul eyed David from that day on. All because of the little song, right? David gets a little more credit. And the interesting thing here is this Hebrew parallelism, the poetry itself. Within the structure, and I really don't. I do not like studying Hebrew poetry. It's necessary at times, but parallelism. The first line, which in here, Saul has struck down thousands, is equal to the second line. That's the way Hebrew poetry works. So it helps us understand a lot of the poetry that's in our book of Psalms. But as these women are singing, Saul has struck down his thousands, David his 10,000s. In the minds of the ladies, in the song, in the poetry, these are equivalents. There's really no difference for them. It's a matter of getting the timing right, the meter, if you will. And so Saul is angry really over nothing. However, now we would say probably by this point, Saul would not be happy to have David even mentioned in the same breath as his success. So it really wouldn't matter the amounts. Even the fact that they're praising David along with Saul at the same time is probably enough to trigger him. But here, Saul is just not going to be happy to hear David being praised like this. Not if it doesn't suit his agenda anyway. Typically, as Saul operates with David, he uses David in such a way as to try to gain favor for himself in the sight of the people, while at the same time trying to actually minimize David. It's bizarre. It's not a very good game plan. Verses 10 and 11, the next day a harmful spirit from God rushed upon Saul, and he raved within his house while David was playing the lyre, as he did day by day. Saul had a spear in his hand. Saul hurled the spear, for he thought, I will pin David to the wall. But David evaded him twice. A couple interesting things here. First of all, we were probably unsure by this point whether David was actually still doing this particular job for Saul, whether he was still in the business of playing musical instruments to soothe Saul's evil spirit, because that was a couple chapters back, and it seemed as if David was too busy with military stuff by this point to do it. As we try to reconcile David playing daily with King Saul, playing the lyre, it's kind of hard to fathom that he's also out with this band of military guys overseeing battles and such like that. That role may have been at this particular juncture more administrative. This might not have been something that he actually went out to battle to participate. It could be that David is directing them where to go from King Saul's palace. Possibly. That's one of the theories that's out there to try to make the text sort of flow a little better for us chronologically and according to what David has been assigned to so far. So verse 11, the curious thing is one, Saul is sitting around holding a spear. I guess a king can do what he wants to. But David evaded him twice. I'm guessing for most of us, if someone hurls a spear at us with intent to kill, we're going to try not to give them a second opportunity. It's bizarre that David hung around. It could be that David was still trying very, very much to soothe Saul by playing music for him, to calm him down. But either way, we see the relationship between David and Saul is going downhill pretty quickly, right? At this point, when somebody is trying to kill you, you probably should come to the idea that this is not going to be a healthy relationship for either one of you, right? Verse 12 through 16, Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. So Saul removed him from his presence and made him a commander of 1,000, and he went out and came in before the people. David had success in all his undertakings, for the Lord was with him. And when Saul saw that he had great success, he stood in fearful awe of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, for he went out and came in before them. All right. Now we have we get Saul's vantage point, right? Saul's afraid of David because he understands. He can see that God is with David. He doesn't know, remember, Saul doesn't know yet that he's been anointed by Samuel. He's in the dark as far as that goes, but he can see that God is working in and through David because of David's success. And he also recognizes that God has departed from him. So, Saul has removed David from his presence. I guess after missing him with the spear twice, he decides to fire David and puts him in command of 1,000 troops. So now David is going to be in the battle. David will be at the battlefield. He will be out of the house of Saul. He'll be out. And David came and went out before the people. David had success in all his undertakings for or because the Lord was with him. In verse 15, a little bit more about Saul's understanding. Where Saul is, seeing all the success that David's having, he has a fearful awe of him. You often wonder. Now, we've talked about Saul's lack of faith. We see that he's usually hanging out in the background. He was afraid of his Israelite brothers, when they went out to utterly destroy the Amalekites, but allowed them to bring back the choice of the spoils and the animals and all that. He was afraid of them. He's going to let them bring stuff back. He's not seemingly out front. He's talking to Samuel. We're going to bring the sacrifice to the Lord, your God. We see that right away, that Saul doesn't seem to have just a whole lot of faith of his own. And here, Saul acknowledges that God is with David, and he's seeing this great success that David has as he's successful at everything he does, and Saul's reaction is fearful awe. I find that interesting. Fearful as he began contemplating that perhaps this young man is going to replace him. David is gaining favor in the kingdom. Things are trending that way for David. Saul is seeing others praising David. There's a reason Saul should be fearful, but he's in awe because David's great success, that could have been Saul. Had he remained faithful to God, obedient, this could have been him. So he's seeing some magnificent things take place, knowing all the while that it could have been him doing those things for the God of Israel. Verse 16 is a little bit anachronistic. It kind of gives us an idea that the author of 1st and 2nd Samuel did so after the divided monarchy because of the language, all Israel and Judah. We didn't have separate Israel and Judah just yet. During Saul's reign, it was still one nation. It was still just the confederation of tribes. Israel was just a mention of all the people, but here it's mentioned separate from Judah, Judah separate from Israel, just like 1st and 2nd Kings and such, when we see the language of Israel and Judah, the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. And so it's a bit anachronistic, but we understand that this history was written after the time of the divided kingdom. So it kind of helps with that, helps us pass time. Anyway, now there's a section here. We're not reading all of it. We probably could. We got plenty of time. Saul develops a plan, if you will. He is going to fulfill the vow that whoever slays Goliath would, be rich, his family would be free, and that he would give a daughter. Well, that opportunity came about. His oldest daughter. In fact, it's chapter 18, verses 17 through 19. Saul promises Merab, his oldest daughter, to David, but then he turns around and gives her to somebody else instead. He begins to think about that. Maybe he doesn't want David as a son-in-law. He doesn't want it. Whoever marries the oldest daughter, they are the nearest to the throne. If something were to happen to Saul, he would be further in line, say, than someone married to one of the other daughters that came along after the oldest daughter. So there's a reason Saul does not give Merab to David, but rather promises to David and gives her to someone else. And that's exactly what happens. However, Samuel did have another daughter, younger daughter, Michal. Our English equivalent, Michelle, it's Tammy's middle name, Michelle. And oftentimes when I read the text, I say Michelle, but it's Michal. Actually loves David. And her daddy finds out and says, okay, well, this can work. She's further down the line, that's fine. You can do that. However, he has his plan. David is his adversary, as he views David, a threat to his fame, his popularity, his ego, he's going to develop a plan to try to get David killed. All right, David, I got this daughter I'm going to give you, but you will owe a bride price. And David understands too. Now, we know what a bride price or dowry is, right? The fiancé would pay, well, the bride, generally it would be going to the bride's father, a bride price or dowry in case something happened to him. If he were killed early in the marriage, died for whatever reason, or if he just deserted her, the bride price would ensure that she would survive. So the bride price is usually pretty great, but it's also commensurate with her position. She is the daughter of the king. She is royalty. The bride price would be astronomical, far too much for a shepherd boy to pay. So Saul's idea then is to not have David pay him in money. He wants David out of the way, out of the picture. So what he decides for the bride price is, David, you don't have to worry about the money. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. You bring me the foreskins of 100 Philistines. I want him to go to battle. He's going to try to fight these 100 Philistines, and surely one of them will successfully kill him, and this will be the end of David, a Bethlehemite, right? Except it backfired. David is zealous. He brings back 200 Philistine foreskins for the bride price. The plan backfired. David gets to marry Michal. So far, everything David is putting his hands to has been successful. Right? Saul cannot thwart David, and he certainly cannot thwart God. And that is exactly what he's attempting to do. So the very thing is happening that we knew was going to happen. This is the last verse of the chapter. David has been successful at everything, successfully paid the bride price, and Saul was even more afraid of David. And so Saul was David's enemy continually. And that sets the stage, right, for the Saul-David conflict that we're about to start. It gets even better from here. Samuel comes back into the picture next chapter, next week, chapter 19. Hope that you'll read ahead. Do you have any thoughts or questions about this chapter? Rather short chapter, pretty straightforward. But we see the point of the chapter is to show David's favor is growing among the people. His place within the kingdom. He's now married to the king's daughter. He's being put more out front. He's in the charge of 1,000 now, right? So his popularity is growing. His station in Israel is growing. He's now more out front, more public. All of the things that need to be happening for him to ascend to the throne, all of that is happening just like God is intending for it to happen, in spite of Saul's attempts to keep it from happening. Okay, we're going to stop right there, and we'll pick up in chapter 19 next week. It's good. I went back and played it too and listened to it. It was really good. I'm trying my best not to, touch anything, hold my mouth right. Hope that it lasts. Sunday morning wasn't good. In fact, we had a bit of a panic. The only sound that was being picked up by the camera in the stream feed was the lapel mic. So we didn't catch any announcements. All that, it was dead quiet in here, and it was just a button on the mixer that needed pushed. Was all it was. Sunday night, it was real good.
Can I ask a question? I don't know, maybe just my ears, but the microphone seems really loud. Does anybody else think it's loud, or is it just my ears?
The lapel mic, I might have been too close on this particular.
And like Sunday, even it was loud. It might be just me being sensitive.
You just want to be sure you hear.
Yeah. There's a fine balance in there because there's some folks in here that can hear really good, and there's some folks in here can't hear. Don't trust them.
So I can understand that, but it just seems louder.
We can back it down. I can back it down a little
Well,
bit.
don't do it for me. I just want everybody else to be in the right consensus.
It was loud.
Is it loud?
It was Sunday, yeah.
That's what I noticed in the tonight. I was like, gosh, is it just, man, I got this hat on, but it just seemed loud. So, but I don't know.
I'll play with this song and try to pick it.
Hopefully it would be scaring people away, like you're hollering at them or something.
Yeah, fair enough.
Number 8. Number 8, we're singing first and last verse. Have you been to Jesus for the cleansing power? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you fully trusting in His grace this hour? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Are you washed in the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Lay aside the garments that are stained with sin, and be washed in the blood of the Lamb. There's a fountain flowing for the soul unclean. Oh, be washed in the blood of the Lamb. Are you washed in the blood, in the soul cleansing blood of the Lamb? Are your garments spotless? Are they white as snow? Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb? Ralph, you dismiss us, please.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time we've had to come and worship Thee. We pray, Heavenly Father, you be with the ones that's on the roads and out in the bad weather. If you keep them safe, and may they have a safe journey to where they're going. We pray, Heavenly Father, you be with our sick. Be that well, Heavenly Father, restore them back to the matrimony and needed help. We pray for our military as they serve our country and keep us free. Protect them and keep them safe. We pray, Heavenly Father, you be with us as we go to our homes and forgive us our sins. This we pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Is it loud just through this? Is it loud through this mic too? Does it seem kind of loud?